Hey everybody, welcome to the Double Stuff Podcast. It's the 5th main food group. I'm Dan.
Oh, I'm Sarah.
I'm Charity.
I'm Alan.
I don't know, don't they say there's 4 main food groups?
Yeah,
Why
right?
in the food pyramid? We're the 5th food group because
Oh, we are.
Yeah.
Wait,
yeah,
are
I
you
thought
talking
he was
like
saying-
Soylent Green?
Well, no.
stuff? What are you
I
talking
thought he
about?
was saying
Like,
food is
really?
the 5th food group, and I'm like, I don't understand how
What does he
food.
mean?
No, consuming our podcast.
Consuming our
Yes,
podcast.
okay, I
Oh.
get it.
Yeah.
It's the one that goes to the bottom of the pyramid.
that's
That's
so
the biggest
meta.
one.
I get it. I get it.
But see,
Okay.
now that I have to explain it, it just isn't.
no, it's
I
okay.
get it.
No, it's okay. Like food,
I'm a dummy.
you gotta take it in, gotta digest
We
it.
can throw
And
this
then-
episode out with the compost.
Oh, look at what a
Then
history.
what would it grow into?
Where do you think you are, California?
What would it feed?
It's true. Oh, this is our gluten-free podcast, guys.
That's exactly true. So we
Oh,
did decide to
yeah.
go ahead and talk about food and I
Yes.
guess like diets and just sort of things like that. And I
need to
think
get
probably one
one.
of the biggest reasons is because I am plant-powered, as Alan pointed out earlier.
Ah.
So.
Yeah. In case no one, he pointed to his hat. He
Oh yeah, they can't see.
I
we
don't
it.
know,
can't
it's
see
keeping
that.
it mysterious,
Oh,
you know?
that's
Oh,
true.
okay. Well, forget what I said.
Blew your cover.
Forget I
You're
said.
gonna have to get a new pair of
He has
glasses.
no
Oh, that's
hat.
fine.
Yeah, he has no hat on. He has no head. It's just
No
floating
head.
shoulders.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's absolutely right.
creepy.
So like I am vegan. I do adhere to like a very strict dietary eating pattern, I guess, whatever you call it, which is
Regimen?
weird. Which is
yeah.
weird in this sort of part of the country. Now, of course, it's kind of become much more popular in the last few years. So if you're listening to this someplace outside of Western Kansas, it probably doesn't seem very weird at all. But do any of you have any sort of dietary restrictions that you either adhere to?
I never went vegan, but I did go vegetarian
Yeah.
for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How
and
long?
let's
2 whole
see.
days, and it was the worst 2 days of my life.
And then I got hungry. I want a hamburger.
I drove in Kansas, saw a cow walk past me.
I was in San Francisco, and my diet, which was pretty basic, but I can eat the same thing over and over again and never tire of
Sure.
it.
Nope.
So I had
Not me.
I would do garden burgers because Boca burgers are garbage. So I would do the garden burgers.
They are really not that good.
And I would just eat that. I would just microwave it and then just eat it and then go. And then if I wanted a sandwich, I would get the American blend, like pre-packaged or whatever. I'd get the giant, like...
What's some like
Five-
Oscar Mayer? Not Oscar
Yeah,
Mayer. That's
Oscar
not.
Mayer.
That's,
He just
I know he
said
said vegetarian.
vegetarian.
I know.
Yeah, well, I
That's
would-
just what came to mind.
Dole, maybe? Are you looking for a brand?
Oh, I was just trying to visualize.
Just finish
what you
your
were-
story.
Yeah, it's
Well,
okay.
I would take some pre-made salad and put it on some toast. And my favorite dressing, and I don't get it anymore, mainly because I don't dress my salads all that much, but it was Dorothy Lynch. And I would put Dorothy Lynch, and I couldn't get it out in San Francisco. I'd have my mom mail Dorothy Lynch
You can
out
get
to
Dorothy Lynch in San Francisco.
It's not on the West Coast.
How strange.
Yeah. It's
Wait,
not.
so your mom was where?
Well, she
sending
was
it to?
here. She'd send out care
Oh.
packages.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So your parents
Care
are from
packages
here.
is Dorothy
Yeah,
Lynch.
they
Okay.
yeah,
They
they're always
helicopter it in.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Amazon didn't exist then.
Well,
Charity.
sorry, actually,
we
I don't,
had to
I
mail
don't know
things
how
to
old
each other.
you two are, but
Couldn't get drone.
We couldn't go onto
Dorothy
the
Lynch right through
intranet
your door.
the interwebs and order some food.
push the buttons and say deliver.
Be like, hey Bezos, give me some Dorothy Lynch.
That's right.
The thing is that I keep
Blockbuster still existed at the time.
I keep hearing Dorothy Lynch, and I'm sure that's a brand. I'm just thinking of some woman. Like, we mailed Dorothy Lynch to Alan, and then
Thanks,
Dan's
Mom.
like, we just shipped Dorothy Lynch.
Yeah.
Take 'em over.
Just shows up at the door. What
Anyway,
am I doing here?
for anybody that's on the West Coast or outside of a Midwest region, Dorothy Lynch is kind of like a French, but it's like a creamy French. It's got a little sweetness. It's got a little bit of tang to it. It's really
French
good.
dressing is the red dressing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
not
kind of
Oh,
like
that's
an orange.
fine.
This is kind of like an
It's
orange
not
color.
that-
Yeah,
it's
okay.
cool,
I don't
orange.
like French dressing.
I don't know. I liked it. And so anyway, I would put that. So I would have a sandwich that was just salad and Dorothy Lynch, and then garden burger straight.
Yeah.
And I think that was it. That was my diet for a long time.
Yeah.
That sounds kind of sad, but maybe I'm picturing something.
Well,
the way the picture I have in my mind is probably not what
You're
actually
living in an
ate.
apartment like a 3
I
by
was
3.
living in a studio. Yeah.
Yeah.
I paid. So this was back in 2000, and a studio apartment in San Francisco, Nob Hill, was I think $1,300 a month.
Wait. 2000. Year 2000?
Year 2000.
How old are you?
Oh, he's.
I'm
he's,
sorry. No, we don't have to.
That's
I
okay.
was-
Charity.
Sorry.
Well,
For all we know, he was
let's say
actually.
why would
he's
you
the
wanna know?
oldest of
Yeah,
us.
no,
Okay,
he was
didn't know.
he was
I
only.
turned
It's
40,
okay. He was.
1980.
Well, that's not that old. I was just.
I was say he was 6, right?
Well,
He had his own.
well,
he had
no,
his own
in
studio
2000,
apartment.
I was 10 years old, so I'm not going to be having an apartment by myself.
Right,
That's
right.
what or 9 years old, 10 years. I was
Something
in
like
that
that.
age, yeah.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have
It was
had an
expensive.
apartment.
And
Yeah.
so I had to go on the cheap. And for some reason, and I also did soy cheese.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like
that sounds
Oh,
Yeah, it was good.
not
jack.
appetizing. I
Soy,
guess.
You know, it's not
jack,
bad.
cheese.
No?
And soy riso. Oh, I would have soy riso. That was really
What's
good.
all these words you're saying?
It's like chorizo.
It's like a tree. Yeah.
yeah.
With
For
soy.
us carnivores
was
on the other half of
delicious.
the table.
But then I didn't. And
I
then
am taking you
now
guys to Wheat Street hot dogs at some point.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, I'm all for us having like going on some random like lunch or dinner date and being like, hey, this is what the cool kids eat.
That's right.
And it's like wheat
Word.
germ on toast or something.
Where's the steak? Alan, you're at a vegetarian restaurant. Well, where's the hot dogs? You're at a vegetarian. Well, where's the hamburgers? Alan, get out of here.
I wouldn't
This
mind
is crap.
because I've had vegan stuff, I've had vegetarian
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah,
I like
same.
them both, and if I were to switch over, I don't think it would be that hard. The thing that I can't do is like pay for it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, it is-
vegan
it's-
products
it's-
are
yeah.
expensive, or
See,
just
I
having
find that to be the
vegetarian.
opposite. I find that
I've tried. I
saved
can't
a lot of
afford
money
it.
buying vegan products compared to when I ate meat. So I feel like meat's very expensive.
Well, and it's not just meat, but I mean vegan. You have to have the alternatives to stuff. So like
You don't have to. So that is the big actually. The
So
big
is
thing.
that's not
so
the
you
rule
can do,
anymore then?
Well, not necessarily. So it depends on what you want, right? So if you want to still kind of eat like you're eating meat, right? There are a lot of alternatives, and they can be a little on like the expensive side and stuff like that, like veggie burgers or like faux chicken strips and stuff like that. But
I like
recently,
veggie
more
burgers. I've had
recently,
some.
I've been
Yeah.
eating more vegan, which is just making food using plant-based foods, and that actually is much cheaper. It's less processed. It's a bit healthier. I mean, in terms of, it's a lot healthier compared to the junk food that I was eating before. But there's
Yeah.
like a junk food vegan, which is what I have been for a long time. And
Is
then
that
there's
like a ramen noodle vegan?
yeah, kind of. I mean, it's exactly like that. It's just like, when you go to the store and you buy like TV dinners,
Yeah.
right? Which I do. I mean, I still do. I'm not saying like I don't do that anymore, but I used to
Yeah.
just do that. But like this morning, I made like a tofu scramble, which is basically a breakfast scramble, but instead of using eggs, I crumble up tofu and I make it. And it's got mushrooms, onions, green peppers, and then spices. So it's all, other than the tofu, which is, still processed, it's all very easy and it's super cheap to make.
Tofu is cheap. We do
$1.25 for a block.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we do that with yellow curry because I love
Yeah.
yellow curry.
Yeah.
With some fried tofu in it and some onions, some garlic. I'm getting hungry.
know,
Put
right?
on some rice.
Absolutely, I do need to go eat lunch. So, but to answer
Yummy.
your question, there is more expensive vegan things if you get like alternatives. They can be very expensive. Like Beyond Burgers, you get like 2 patties. It's like $6.
Yeah,
for
so that's
it.
what I've
Yeah.
seen.
So if you do want to continue to eat in a very carnivore sort of manner and kind of get those flavors, that can be very expensive. Absolutely.
That's kind of interesting because, I mean, I was joking around about it and stuff. What I do like nowadays is that for people that do end up, maybe converting to another kind, they make their veggie burgers or something. They do taste meat-like, a lot of them, especially for ones that are still kind of doing that little in-between transition thing. And they're like, oh, but I kind of miss having the cheeseburger. But they actually do kind of taste like, I guess, the way they would. Or
Impossible Burgers at like
yeah.
Burger King.
So I will say it seems like nowadays, maybe within the past, I don't know, maybe 10 years or so, they have started making food that looks more attractive, looks tasty versus here, you see that grass in the field? I want you to get a fork and some ranch dressing and just eat it.
It's funny that you use the word like convert too, because I do feel like there's a lot of like people that feel that it's a conversion. And maybe like the process.
I mean, it's a big life change.
Well, that's the thing. And then when you try to explain to family members that are non-vegan or vegetarian, they're like, "So what are you doing?"
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm not eating meat anymore. So how's that work? Well, you don't eat meat. So why would you do that?
That's
Because
true.
I don't want to eat meat. But wow. So what do you do? Where do you live?
Well, I think that goes with what Dan was saying earlier of how vegan do you want to be? Because, I've met some people, so it's not just eating certain foods, but even if you have to find like a candy bar or something, you have to read like, does this chemical mean this and this and this?
Or
And
made
is
with
it
milk.
made in a, like you have to do
Absolutely.
so much research to eat this one little thing, which at that point, I don't even want it anymore.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work to have to do all that.
It is, and I do catch myself reading labels. I mean, the funniest thing that I do, and I know I look like the most ridiculous human being on the planet, but I will see a bag of chips, and the flavor sounds interesting, so I will take the bag and I will turn it over and I will look at the ingredients, which means to a passerby, I am looking at the nutritional facts of a bag of chips, which is just like, no. You're either going to eat it or you're not going to eat it. It doesn't matter how.
You're definitely not the only one on the planet, because I do that. I had to start doing that. Because, I mean, well, when I was in college, I did try to do my best eating healthier, which is hard to do in college when you have those weird cafeteria foods and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was in college when I decided not to do. I seldom did soda. Like when I was in high school and teenager stuff, I used to just chug down orange soda and Sprite and all that stuff. But when I was in college, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and do away with that. Maybe do an occasional orange juice or something. I did drink a lot more drinking of water. Try to eat more sandwiches versus burgers, that kind of thing. So I tried to be a little bit more healthy.
You went the Jared route at Subway?
Kinda, if I could afford Subway at that time. But since graduating from college, I have been a lot healthier. I mean, I can always stand for improvement, obviously.
Yeah.
But in 2018, that took a really drastic turn when I was hospitalized and like literally almost died a couple of times hospitalized. And when you're in that situation, because a lot of that probably did come from some of the stuff I ate or maybe the way I was eating. But after that, when you're in a situation like that, a near-death experience, you have to make some drastic changes as to what you can and can't eat, especially sugar. Because I think sugar was one of the big things why I ended up having that weird attack on my body. And it's weird because, I never used to look at the nutrition labels like you said, but goodness, they put sugar in everything.
It's in everything.
It is, and it's such large amounts.
And even in stuff that says low sugar, it's like instead of 40 grams or whatever, it's 32.
Or if it's sugar free, it's like we've swapped out sugar for 7 different chemicals.
Yeah.
You're not gonna eat.
They say it's like sugar free, but you still like sucralose and stuff.
Then
Which is
why
still
is
like
it
a sugar.
sweet?
And what really sucks is just like that's the cheapest stuff.
Yeah.
So like
It
if you
is.
are struggling or if you're having a hard time and you need to like watch your budget, it's so easy to eat garbage.
Yeah.
No, it
Garbage
is.
that
Yeah,
will
which
end
is
you
why I
up
was
with
talking about
salt
earlier of
and
switching
sugar.
to vegan or being
Yeah.
a vegetarian, or even with me, like I've tried just doing just organic products and trying to find stuff that's chemical free, and even
Non-GMO
that's
stuff.
really hard, with me trying to watch my weight and watch my diet, and I'm at the gym all the time and stuff, and I'm like, okay, I just did a 2-hour boxing workout, and is this meal going to cancel out my blood, sweat, and tears that I just did at the gym, and so it's hard to eat right sometimes or be able to afford it.
Because me and Charity, and we're not the only ones, but there's a lot of families, even bigger families than ours, that they have parents working multiple jobs and they can't afford to get that stuff. You have to get stuff, and usually the non-healthy stuff, they usually come in big amounts, but it's enough to spread, like pastas and stuff like that. Like you get it in large amounts.
Or you got the dollar menu at every fast food restaurant.
Yeah, the dollar menu. Everybody,
Value
most
meal.
people can stretch $1 in that way, which, that probably unfortunately leads to why there's a lot of overweight issues with everybody, because I mean, that's probably not the main thing, but that's one of the big ones.
Well, but I also think that the awareness of what we're putting into our bodies is much more.
Oh yeah.
We're much more conscious of it now.
Conscious. There you go.
Yeah.
I know when my first daughter was born, she had eczema pretty badly, and so my wife and I were trying to figure out how to make her more comfortable. And lotions and things like that weren't doing everything. So we were wondering, well, what if we changed her diet? So we started doing like non-GMO organic. And you're right, we found like it's going to be very difficult if you're trying to replace everything that you have right now on your grocery list with a non-GMO or an organic. you're gonna run into a quadruple
It's a lot.
as far as the money that you spent.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna quadruple, and we got into an issue where it was much more expensive.
Well, and I've noticed nowadays a lot of baby formula stuff. That stuff is expensive now because everything is organic for the baby. I mean, let alone for kids and adults. But I've looked at some of the stuff. I'm like, gosh, even for the babies, that's a lot.
But some of it needs to be right. I mean, you got so many. I mean, kids are like probably the number one consumers of milk, and so it's not just milk. We want to make sure that we're not like the cows that the milk is coming from is going to be healthy. When you start, seeing, reading articles and watching movies like Game Changers and things like that, and you're like, oh my gosh,
Have you seen that yet?
Kidding me?
Game Changers?
I haven't seen it.
I haven't watched it
I'm
either.
talking
My
about
wife
it right
watched
now.
it. No.
Let me tell you about this.
I'm curious.
seen
Because
it.
actually, because
But
there are a lot.
Yeah, but the idea about it is, how far, industrial farming or factory farming will go to stretch their profits.
Absolutely.
And the corners that they'll cut at the expense of the consumer. And I'm not saying that that's new, that's been around, but I do think that we're in an era where we're getting wise. We're knowing that we're getting took. But
We're
the whole
getting
thing
took.
is I think that ultimately it's the responsibility of the individual or the family to make those decisions. And I think the stigmas that we were talking about earlier, like the conversions and things like that, are starting to lift.
Yeah.
They're a little
where-
more, they're a little more open now.
So if Dan, when we first met, I'm vegan. I'm like, ooh, you're what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Right. Absolutely.
How does
and of
that
course-
work?
And of course, we decided to talk about this thing, so
Yeah.
I had to open the episode and be, I'm like, I'm vegan. And
Yeah.
it's like, that's the joke. It's like vegans will always hide. If somebody's a vegan, they'll tell you.
Yeah,
And it's just like, but that's not like, it's interesting because that's not really what I found to be the case. What I found to be the case most often is I will tell people that I'm vegan and they're curious about it.
Yeah.
They're really curious about like the reasons why.
'Cause they're hearing
or how
about
you
it.
get stuff like that. And they're
Yeah.
hearing about it from a lot of things, which is not the case when we went like vegetarian originally,
Yeah.
which was like years ago. So, I mean, even just recently, it's just gotten to be more of an accepted sort of.
I think that's
idea.
it. Well, and people are starting to be like, wait a second, why are people like choosing not to eat? What is there a reason why? And then, we live in an age of all kinds of information being inundated with, pros and cons.
Yeah.
And I'm of the opinion that there's a pro for everything, there's a con for everything, but it is up to the individual's, I guess, the purpose of making sure that you're making good choices, educated choices, and we live in a wealth of information to where we can start to make those decisions.
Right.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I would caution, especially for myself too, is when I start taking like group mentality, group think over researched, and taking group opinion over someone that would say, actually, all that's just horse malarkey.
Ooh, horse malarkey.
Malarkey.
Well,
Remember,
It's
we got to be
malarkey.
kid friendly. Got to be family friendly here.
That's
Yeah,
right.
well, that brings in an interesting point. Hopefully, this doesn't open up another can of worms for this show, but pickiness. I have an issue sometimes with people that are being so picky, especially when it comes to food, because I guess, and like I said, just dealing with people in family situations, we couldn't afford to be picky. You had to eat what was in front of you.
That's right.
And the thing is, I feel like with maybe the way people think about food and stuff, I mean, not there's anything wrong with picking and choosing, but pickiness has always been a rough spot with me, especially when, like, I've worked in some situations where, like, I've worked in a food-related industry, and like whatever I do, I can't satisfy them. Like they're wanting to get something like, so how can I help you? What do you buy? I don't know. What do you have? And I'm like, well, how about, I don't like sugar. I don't like salt. I don't like that. I'm like, why did you come into the store?
Yeah.
Like, what do you eat? If you don't like this, you don't like that. I don't like the color red of that candy. I don't like this on this piece of meat. So I'm like,
The color red does cause cancer.
the color red.
I'm just
I was like, what the heck does that mean? But like, And like with children, like parents seem to, in a lot of ways, I think they let their children become more picky with food. And
I don't think that's ever changed, though.
It's never changed, but then they start becoming picky adults, which is even worse.
Because I guarantee you were picky too, but you had parents, much like myself, which is like,
yeah,
you're going to eat it.
We couldn't afford to be picky.
You're going to eat it.
But the thing is that, but I don't think a lot of, I mean, I can't say this for all parents, but I don't feel like that's being enforced really in certain situations. And
you're letting your children choose their menu. I will totally say I'm guilty of that. I become a short order cook a lot.
But there's some, and they can't make up their mind. I don't like this. I don't like this. What do you like? I don't know, but I don't like this. Like they don't like anything.
Then don't have children.
Well, I feel like
that's the conclusion.
I feel like there's a difference between like pickiness and informed pickiness and then obnoxiousness. Yeah. So like kids would be like, well, I don't like that because of the way it looks, right? But it's just like, no, shut up and eat your broccoli. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like you don't know. You don't have the information. You don't know why you're supposed to eat these things because they're actually good for you, right?
But you can't use that excuse for full-grown adults.
Well, you can't. But so when an adult, right? I think that there's nothing wrong with being picky because you're talking about like the food that you're taking something you're putting into your body, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And your body has to be able to use that food, and it may not. I don't think there's anything wrong with pickiness of choosing what you're going to eat. I do think there's something wrong with obnoxiousness.
Mm-hmm. Maybe that's more under the obnoxious category.
Or making somebody feel bad about their choices.
And let me give you an example of this. So Burger King has the Impossible Whopper, right? And it is not anywhere labeled a vegan food. Because it's cooked using the same, not ingredients, on the same grills, stuff like that, right? I understand that as a vegan. If I'm going to go out someplace and eat food at a restaurant that is not a vegan restaurant, there's a thing called cross-contamination. And I think that being obnoxious about it, like somebody who tried to sue Burger King or is in the process of doing that, because it's like cooked on there, is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, what do you expect? It's a fast food restaurant.
So you can be picky, right? But if you're going to go out and if you're going to be picky, that means stay home and eat the food on your stuff that you want to make. Don't go out to the world and be obnoxious to other people.
And maybe that's what I mean, because that's what it seems like.
But to play devil's advocate, though, that's something that the company should have thought of. Like, I agree with you.
But they did. That's the thing. That's why they don't call it a vegan food. They say there's even a thing on there that says if you want it prepared vegan, we will put it in the microwave and make it for you. But you have to ask for it. So the information is actually there on the
I guess.
label.
So that's still
that still sounds a bit over.
It's still a chance you're taking offering something like that. As far as fast food in a restaurant, I would expect better, I guess, but fast food.
Yeah, fast food's its own entity. Like you if you're gonna go to a fast food place, you're not gonna expect 5-star service.
Why not? Why doesn't it look like the commercial, Sarah?
I
saw the commercial, and it doesn't look like the commercial.
Food photography is a whole other.
That's a whole thing. Yeah. That's a whole other one. But yeah, I mean, food for thought, right?
That's right. All right. So we'll go ahead and end it there then.
Yeah, you got to end it with that.
Thanks for letting me talk a little bit about veganism and talking to us about
Thank
diets
you, Dan.
and everything.
Thank you for sharing.
Thanks for getting it off your chest.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I know that was very hard for you.
And if there's anyone in social media that, whether they agree or disagree with what we're talking about, or do you have any issues if you're a vegetarian or a vegan or food eater?
If you eat food, let us know.
If you eat food, let us know.
I'll let you know.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Thanks for listening. You can find other episodes on doublestuffpod.com or your favorite podcast app. You can also join in the fun on social media on Facebook and Instagram at Double Stuff Podcast and on Twitter at DoubleStuffP, as in the letter P.